What happens when startup founders can't meet payroll?
Sorry, no problem.
Hi, my name is Ifeoma Nwobu.
Hi, my name is Seye Bandele.
And today we're giving great answers to questions about being startup founders from the internet.
How long does it take to get investors and raise funding? I mean, I don't think there's a template or definition for it. When you're ready to move your business to a new level or scale your business or do something is when you start thinking about getting funding. Back in the old days, investors were able to fund an idea, but nowadays it has to be that the business already existing and doing something, and then you now go out and get funding. I can tell you a little bit about my experience, but I'll have to first.
Yeah, I think it really just depends on the current market conditions, your business stage or level, and also the business model. So there are some businesses that don't require funding to kick off. But I think on an average, a good funding round can be closed within 3 to 6 months, a good, fast, quick round.
Oh, yeah. You mean, okay, wait, from when you start trying to raise funds to when you get the funds? Yeah. It can take around that 3 to 6 months, sometimes more. For instance, we raised in 2022, which was that's when the market first went bust, right? So it took us we started raising in April, we finished in November. We pitched to 21 investors in total, and the first 17 were no. And then the last 4 were yes. So it all depends on what your business is, how great you're doing, what the market looks like, and if you are the right type of guy to build that business.
How do founders decide to get an investor? Do they start with their money and hope for the best? Or you can start with family and friends supporting the ideation stage, just kicking off. There's also accelerators, which is a great way to get funding as a really early stage business. And after that, you then decide if you want to do a follow-on round. Just determine your business model. Sometimes you do not need investor money to start. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The answer is yes. Do you start with your money? Most of the time, yes, or equivalent of money, which is effort and work. Just go and do the work and start the business and start doing something that's investable. So in most cases, you will spend a lot of your money. And then if you are fortunate to be able to talk to friends and family that can help you get started. I keep hearing the words stock options, equity, and RSU when negotiating contracts with startups. What do they mean? Sounds a very personal question. When you start a company, the idea is that you give value to this company that you have built. In Nigeria, if you register a company at CAC with the minimum number of shares of 1 million, so let's assume, and they say the price of a share is 1 naira. So your company is worth 1 million from the day you registered it, right? 1 million naira. Now, if you have a co-founder, let's assume you share that equally with your co-founder. So both of you have 50% equity in that business, right? So technically you own 500,000 shares of this company. You already own it. So when you get investors, they start to buy that equity from you, right? And they also own it already. Now, to get employees to join you on your journey, sometimes it needs more than a salary. You need more than a salary to convince them. So in startups, they've designed all this stuff like stock options and RSUs, reserve stock units and stuff like that to be able to help you have more skin in the game and more commitment to the business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, the question is, what do they mean? So stock options are stock options that you have to buy.
Yeah, same way you'd buy stocks on any platform and wait for a certain time to get the returns.
Okay, so to be clear, the stock options, so we have these things called ESOP, right? Employee stock options plan or something like that, where they say we reserve, out of that 100% that I described now, let's say we reserve 10% for the employees. Now, it doesn't automatically belong to them the way equity already belongs to the founders. Yeah. At some point, they are going to have to exercise their stock options by paying actual cash for it. Yeah. Now, you can design these payments in any way. You can take it as a portion of their salary over a period of time or whatever. But the logic is that it is at a discounted rate. Today this is worth 1 million, right? I'll sell it to you at a discounted rate at that time when you're ready to exercise your options. And I think for RSUs, you don't pay that one.
They just give it to you.
It's not equity. You still have to exercise at some point, but you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
What are the first 5 roles you should hire for if you are trying to maintain a lean but high-performing team? Funny enough, in my experience, the first roles I had for were customer success, right? Because you, the founder, you have to do the sales. Sales is the most important role in day one because that's how the business starts to work. So you don't outsource sales until you are getting to a scalable point. So in the very early days, you will do your sales. Don't hire sales in the very early days. What I did was to hire customer success, and yeah, it was customer success. I eventually did hire sales when I got to a point where I needed to double my effort. So it was customer success for me because I'm in B2B.
I have a different perspective. It depends on your business again. So if I had to list out, I would say customer success, definitely. Sales, even if you're not hiring, but you're doing it. Design, depending on the kind of business you want to run, because design is a fundamental part of a product. Engineering, and maybe operations.
Okay, I didn't mention engineering because I have a technical co-founder.
What do I do if a rider of a logistics company runs away with my package? First of all, you can cry, try to get support, and then after all is said and done, you open your phone and download the SendStack app so that you can make sure that never happens to you again.
Okay.
How much does it cost the average startup in infrastructure, like software tools, hosting, etc.? Which cost surprised you the most? For me, I think it's Notion or Slack. I just want to talk to people. Why is it so expensive? I think that's the one that surprised me the most. And then in terms of the average cost, I think it depends on the size of your team. For a really small team, maybe from $500 and above, because there are some software tools that you pay for per head. So,
infrastructure costs shouldn't surprise you because that's part of what even leads to how you figure out your pricing from day one.
Yeah.
So your pricing should already take care of your infrastructure costs. And as the business grows, it continues to take care of it because people are paying you for those services. Slack, just like you said, we will cancel Slack. We're not using Slack again. We use Google Chat because we are using Google Email. So people should chat. And why would I pay equal amount of money on Slack and on Google. And we have, especially when dollar went out of control, we had to cut back on some of them. The cost that surprised me the most is engineering salary. People's salary. They are collecting more than me in the office. How long does it take to close a B2B client? To be factual, usually, depending on the size of business you're trying to close, but what makes B2B sales complicated is not just one person saying yes or no. It is several things, several people, stakeholders, and all of that. And depending on the kind of organization you're talking to, that can happen in 1 week or it can happen in 2 months, right? So what we just help you as a salesperson in B2B is to be sure about your value proposition and sure that it matches the problems of your prospective clients. Once that is go for go, then you can now start dealing with all the human elements. So,
Yeah, and I think it depends, like you said, if you're trying to close an SME, you could literally do it on the spot. For example, if you're trying to get them to just use a bank app and let's say they just experience some frustration with payments, on the spot. But if you're dealing with a much bigger business, then it could take a while.
What if I collect my salary in the middle of the month and they sack me? Or if I decide to collect half of my salary and go to the company? So I get this question. It's talking about what we do. Without divulging too much information, right? The product or Enwage Access, where you would be able to collect the salary in the middle of the month, is called Enwage Access by Paid. Technically, think of it as a loan to the company on behalf of the employee. So basically, the reason why I can give you your salary, right, or any sum of it, whether half of it or quarter of it or 1% of it, is because I know that your employer is going to pay you at the end of the month. So the obligation to pay that money back is on the employer, right? However, things happen, right? If you ghost, right? First of all, in the terms and conditions, you know that you have to pay the money back to pay. If somebody collects the salary and you sack him, you have an obligation to pay him up until that day that he left. And since he's only accessing a percentage of the money anyway, you will pay back the money that needs to be paid.
Or they'll drag you on Twitter.
Yeah.
What happens when startup founders can't meet payroll?
Sorry, no problem.
I don't know what happens because that never happened, but I think the ideal thing to do should be to even communicate when you foresee it happening, because it's not on payday that you know that you can't meet payroll. So I think communicating and also setting expectations for when you would try to pay people. In some cases, just expect some people to drop off because, to be fair, people have family bills and expenses. But in some other cases, if you have more loyal staff, they're more understanding, and just keep communicating and setting expectations in a way that they actually trust your word. And in such cases, make sure you're not paying yourself. And just like, it's a level of sacrifice that you have to make for that time being, and then do a reorientation so that everybody's sort of like more aligned with goals. What needs to change? What have we not been doing well? What is slowing down the process of like getting money to pay people, and just try to like close those loopholes, hypothetically speaking.
I mean, I think there's some context to it, right? It says when startup founders can meet payroll. First of all, it could be a bootstrapped startup or a funded startup, right? If it's a funded startup, you know, like, hey, if we don't do XYZ by end of the quarter, we're not going to be able to make payroll, right? So you know, and you start either doing the things you need to do to not make that not happen, or you start to sensitize your people to say, hey guys, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to make it beyond March. So, you know, start looking for a job, or if you want to go, you go. But I see, initially my thinking was that it can never be a surprise, right? You should know that, oh, this month there's no money for payroll. But I see from a bootstrap standpoint how you might not know that you're not going to make payroll in that same month. If you have big clients who are owing you, for instance, when we were bootstrapped, a big organization owed us for like 9 months, right? Massive amount of money. And we just kept on like, you know, trying to get people to cover for us and stuff like that. So you might have a commitment that you receive money at a particular time and it doesn't come in, and then you can't make payroll. In that case, what I've just seen to always help in any business that I've built is to be as transparent as possible with the people who are breaking their backs to work for you.
Yeah.
Be clear with information, like this is how the things that are happening in business are going to affect me and you. And you have to let them know that you are in it with them. If not, they can start forming narratives in their heads that are not true. Be open enough with communication, try to manage expectations, and, you know, at the end of the day, the Nigeria we do now.
God will see us through. What's the hardest thing tech founders have to do? Be a tech founder? I don't know.
Most people just think selling is selling to customers. From day one till the day you make it or the day you die, you are selling as a founder. You are selling to your co-founder or anybody who decides to join you.
Selling to your team.
You are selling to customers. You are selling to
investors. You're selling yourself.
Yeah, selling to the general public, right? You are selling an image. You are branding your company. You are doing all of that stuff. It is so hard and it's so relentless, and you may not see the rewards like in the immediate, right? But your job as a tech founder is that you are selling forever. Yeah,
it's just putting up that image of being fine when like you're dying on the inside. But yeah, I never know what operations means. Can a COO or head of operations explain?
CEO, please explain.
So it really depends. Are you talking about business operations, people operations? But I think operations just refers to every single activity within an organization. So think of a COO. By the way, the O in COO is not operations officer, it's operating, which means that there's a level of involvement they have in the day-to-day that the CEO doesn't have, because he or she is out there like trying to get more business for the company, probably doing like investor relations or like things that are not very specific or specialized. And then the COO is keeping track of activities happening within an organization to know what processes are working, what processes aren't working, what are the results, what are key performance indicators across board. So a COO is basically the head of every single team within an organization, if I had to like simplify it.
Yeah, I mean, if I can weigh in, I know I'm not a COO, is the way I think about it, that if you don't give somebody a responsibility, then nobody is going to own it, right?
Yeah.
In my organization, I treat every department as an organization. So there's the marketing organization, there's the sales organization, there's the product organization, and all that. And because all of these guys, they have so many interplays, and responsibility if, for instance, there is a disagreement between two of these organizations, whose responsibility is it day on day to ensure that that does not affect the operations of the organization? The CEO may not even have the bandwidth to say, what happened? Oh, okay, how do we fix this problem? He may be at that point in time in Kenya trying to close a new deal. So you need to give somebody that responsibility and clearly spelled out that, hey, you are in charge of operations at this organization. And then, just like she said, how do we ensure that everybody works together to get the best out of the business?
Yeah, and the CEO is responsible for that expansion. Like if you were to if you were to maintain like the same quality for your Nigerian team in another country, so like what's the compliance process going to be like? How are you going to start like setting up in a new market? So think of operations as what people call growth, and only ascribe to one particular team, but growth of the business generally.
How do startup founders find co-founders? Do you just link with your guys, or do you have to hire someone? Bro, if you have to hire a co-founder, you're in trouble, bro.
Really? I beg to differ.
So I lean a lot into my own experience when I'm answering these questions, and there was no way I could have hired anybody, right? I think it was just like a God thing, right? I had a person that I had known for many years who was at that point in his life thinking about starting a company, and he was talking to me about, what are the things that we can do in tech? And I also had the idea, and then we came together. For most people, I think that would be a beneficial arrangement.
Yeah.
But if you have to do something else, I can imagine what your experience would be.
Yeah, no, it depends. Like again, in my experience, I was hired. So my co-founder and I weren't always co-founders, but he hired me, but he didn't hire me as a co-founder. So that's the thing. He hired me as a more like junior staff at the time, and then I grew into it. So it could work like that as well. So maybe if you didn't have someone at the inception, you can bring them on board, but not give them that title responsibility yet. And then they grow into it, and then you decide if it's worth making that agreement.
So to be clear, this makes sense, right? When I said if you have to hire a co-founder, you'll be in trouble, would be to start a company, there's so much sacrifice.
I don't think you can hire a co-founder. You can hire a C-suite.
You can hire anybody, and then as you guys figure out stuff,
Founder, you found it.
this person gets it, and I think this person is good enough to be a co-founder. But if you start out like, you know what, I have an idea, and I'm going to hire a co-founder. Maybe I hire a technical co-founder to build the product. Bro.
I think co-founder is more a title than responsibility when you get to a certain stage, because then if you're a CEO, you can be CEO without being the founder. And you can also be the founder without being the CEO. So it
helps to link with your guys if you and your guys have the same motivation. It helps.
Yeah. Apart from risk, uncertainty, and stress of running a company, what's one annoying thing startup founders have to deal with that people don't talk about enough? For me, it has to be at the earliest stages, being like everything, the customer support person, sales person, every single thing, but then still maintaining this brand image of a founder and someone who's respectable. Like you can literally be on the CRM helping a customer, and they are insulting you and your father's life, they're insulting the company, and then you see them outside or they see you and they're like, hey, co-founder of this, COO. It's very hard, because then I'm like, you were insulting us. So I think just having to switch context is so hard, because sometimes I actually want to say my mind. But that's the hardest thing. And maybe if I had to add something else, knowing so much but having to keep your mouth shut. Like, I know so many stories, things that don't concern me, that I didn't ask for, but then you just have to unlook and keep quiet just so that you don't say anything offensive or unkind. Definitely hard.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just two things. There are many that I can talk about, but I think the two that come to mind now are, number one, for me, there are sometimes I just want to retract into myself and just deal with stuff in my own way. But you have to, you can't, right? You have to talk to people, You have to figure out stuff. You have to attack problems. Everybody's knocking at your door to say, hey, Seye, I need your opinion on this. What should we do on this and all of that? Every time, without fail, no breaks, no leave. That's a bit annoying. Then another thing that, maybe, I think it's a bit annoying is that as a startup founder, especially when you're in a growth stage, like you're a growing company, a lot of stuff requires a high level of diplomacy. Just like you said, you know stuff, but you can't talk, you can't act, because you have to approach it as a leader, right? So there may be things going on in your organization and you're like, this is not the time to deal with this.
Yeah.
Let me allow it and approach it from a different angle. That thing is annoying then. Sometimes I just want to everybody stop and let's start again. But it's part of your leadership qualities as a founder, and you need to be able to do that properly.
Why do tech founders like to feel like they're the best thing since sliced bread? Okay, first of all, sliced bread is not the best thing, but I feel like it's because there's a lot of courage that it takes to be a tech founder, or a founder generally, even to start a business. It takes a lot of courage to say no to some level of consistency or certainty with your career path and taking like a very uncertain path. So obviously people who are courageous have that pride that they feel. And I think instead of making it a thing for people to sort of like be ashamed of, let's all just focus more on the usefulness of having people who can be founders and people who choose not to. And then we all come together to make Nigeria great again.
I mean, I think for me, I don't know if it's a matter of they like to feel that way or if it's just the way people are perceiving them and like, oh, this guy is feeling like. First of all, being a founder, right? It helps you mature really quickly, right? You will go through a lot of character development, physical development, mental development in a short period than somebody who did not start a company, right? Let's even take it out of tech founder or founder. Just being an entrepreneur, right? Where you have to think about the success of a business, right? And all the things that add up to that. So you will mature really fast. That's why people get into leadership positions and go gray hair, because you are constantly making decisions and you have to make the best decision every time. And because of that exposure now makes you have some type of disposition to things, right? And I see how people who are looking from outside in can think you are moving around with a chip on your shoulder. But it's just that, bro, this thing you are offering to me does not make sense. I already know, right? Because I've been in too many scenarios to know that this is just a waste of my time and I'm going to say no to it and move on. And then people are like, this guy is feeling too much and stuff like that. So it's character development. You will learn a lot. It may not be, some people may have personality traits that appear that way or make them actually be that way. But it's not that. To many of the founders I know, they are not like proud people. When you eventually sit down and talk with them, you know that they are going through a lot and that's why they appear that way. What's been the lowest point you've been as a startup founder right now? Because my future is bright. So I feel like today will always be the lowest point. Tomorrow we're looking ahead. The future is bright. And together, as I said before, we'll make Nigeria great again.
Grey8 Answers is powered by Grey. With Grey, you can open a UK, US, and EU bank account from your phone or laptop for free. Receive, send, exchange, and manage multiple currencies, including stable coins, and get a virtual dollar card all in one app. Visit grey.co to get started for free.